everyone. This week we have an interview with Alexis Jarrett, our second patient with sickle cell disease. Today we get to hear about her life and her experiences living with this disease. It's great to have you here, Alexis, and I'm really glad to have met you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
Of course.
for the invite.
Of course. So, Alexis, tell us a little bit about yourself. What would you like our viewers to know about you? This can be anything about your family, your hobbies, your occupation, where you're from, any of that.
So I am born and raised and currently living in a city called Columbus, Georgia. It is about an hour and 30 minutes south of the Atlanta airport in Georgia. And so we are affectionately known as the Fountain City because we have a lot of like fountains in our city. We definitely, just Southern girl, have always been a big reader, big on education. I am also a licensed minister, and as far as the day job is concerned, my degree and concentration was in communications and marketing. And so what I do every single day is do branding, build websites, and do design for service-based clients. So anyone who has started a business or a nonprofit that needs more awareness on social media marketing, branding, that's what I do as a day job. And I'm also with the ministry. I do life coaching and I help women lead women into their purpose and out of trauma. And so I'm able to help other sickle cell warriors, other chronically ill patients, and other women who have had troubled past navigate through some of those difficult moments and be able to help coach them into a better life. And so, on top of all that, in 2 weeks I get married, and my life is about to change. But on top of all of that, I am a big foodie. I love to eat. I love to. My latest thing that I'm trying to get into now is like burrito tacos. Um, I love to go to church, and I have a very big family. That is one thing about me. Like on both sides, I have about a minimum of 20 people on each side. I have a huge family. And so I'm just a big family girl, Southern girl, and love football, all the good stuff. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome. Sounds like you have a lot going on, and you just sound like you keep yourself really busy all the time, which is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, can you tell us the story of your diagnosis? How were you first diagnosed with this disease?
So I was diagnosed with sickle cell disease at 6 weeks old. My mother actually, I was in the 1980s. Of course, this was a time in our history where things like HIV, AIDS, sickle cell disease, a lot of these diseases that were prevalent in minorities really began to come to the surface in our healthcare systems. And so, being born in the late 80s, my mother actually was told when I was 6 weeks old that I had sickle cell. But while she was pregnant, she was not told that she was at risk for passing on the disease to me, even though the doctors understood her blood type and her genotype, and of course, my father's. So that presented a lot of just lack of trust in her with the healthcare systems. And how we first started out was, she was, feeling, lied to. And they really viewed her as a young African American woman in poverty. She wouldn't know much about it. They told her I would be born very sickly. I probably would not make it out of childhood. If I did, I would not develop properly. And I ended up experiencing what's called a pain crisis from sickle cell disease. My very first one was at 3 months old, where I was rushed to the hospital. And ever since then, I have had, to deal with complications in life with sickle cell. So my beginning wasn't very healthy. In fact, my childhood, I was sick a lot. But my mother and my grandmother and a lot of just the matriarchs on my mom's side of the family really managed to help me have the most normal life possible. And they did not freak out or overreact or overdo my life with having sickle cell. They made sure that I understood, we go to school. If you get sick, you just get sick. If you need to check out early, you need to check out early. Always have water on you, those sort of things. So my early years were a little bit tumultuous, but we made it as a family. Yeah,
Yeah, sounds like you have a really awesome family, and I
dude.
can tell you're really grateful for your parents and your maternal figures in your family.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so on that same line of thought, how would you say your family was impacted by your conditions?
It changed their life. I think that seeing me suffer was hard for them. My mom, of course, the first few years of my life, up until 3 years old, she was a single mother. And at about when I was 4, she got married. And so growing up, having my nuclear family, my mom, my stepfather, my aunts, and my grandmother, they were primarily the ones who had to handle me having sickle cell. On the nights that my mom had to go to work, she called in and would just have to say, "Hey, I can't come in. My daughter is sick." She would take time off. As I got older, that became less and less of a thing for her. And once I was about 10 or so years old, 10 or 11 years old, my grandmother and my great aunt were retired. And so whenever I got sick, they were able to kind of come in and kind of be that helping hand to my mom, where she was working, trying to establish life for herself. I will say that for caregivers of someone with a rare disease, the disease impacts them just as much as it impacts you, because this is now a part of their life, their routine, their schedule. And having a rare disease is very difficult because um, in understanding what rare diseases are, you really don't put yourself at risk for getting it. You're not doing anything um irresponsible to get this disease, or being irresponsible with your body. It just kind of comes. And so you really have no choice of whether or not you're going to deal with it. But my family, they have been here for me every step of the way. And I do think that one of their big focuses as a family was making sure I was as independent as possible, because they too needed a life. And so as I'm about to get married, I think this transition, and in my um, history with my fiance, one of the big parts of our relationship was discussing what is it going to look like for our relationship with me having sickle cell disease. And he has been here for me every step of the way. So I think throughout the course of our 3-year dating period, I've only been hospitalized twice. I have had days and moments where I have had to rest in the house, not do as much as possible, not work as how everyone else works, but I definitely have been provided for, and know that I'm safe.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And yeah, so one of the things that you actually mentioned really struck out to me because we've noticed it as a theme across all of our interviews, is that people are constantly saying, like, I didn't ask for this, you know? It's not something that you could possibly attain anywhere. And one of our other actual sickle cell interviewee mentioned this, like, other people who are suffering from conditions like HIV or other infectious conditions, there are chances that those were due to irresponsible behaviors. And while that doesn't negate the effect of that on their health, people with rare diseases, they didn't ask for it. And it comes with a lot of things that they can't be expected to know or deal with. And it's just very frustrating. And that's just one of the big themes that we've been noticing as we interview a lot of patients with rare diseases. And that's just something that really struck out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things I think to deal with, because you suffering is suffering. So whether or not somebody is suffering because they were warned not to do something, or asked or told, hey, this is a possibility, or whether or not you had no idea, suffering is suffering all across the board. But I do believe the mindset of I did ask for this plays a big role then. And what is then the responsibility of your healthcare systems, your government officials, your civic duty in healthcare and insurance, to support those who do not go out of their way to become sick, but their bodies are naturally born with inclinations for sickness. And so I think that it poses a really big question about what's fair and what's not fair, and what really is health, with so much of our world being sick, and knowing that 70% of all disease is preventable. but we fall in the 30% where what is happening with us is rare. It's not necessarily something that we could prevent. So yeah, that is something that you would commonly hear, especially with sickle cell disease. It's very difficult at times to manage, because at the end of the day, I think with sickle cell, you want to try to keep down as many opportunities for flare-ups and for crisis as possible. That is your responsibility, is to try to make sure that your body has what it needs to not go into crisis. Going to the doctor is your responsibility. Getting regular checkups is still your responsibility. Filing for necessary insurances is your responsibility. But I do think that those companies, these organizations, do have a responsibility to people to provide them with things that do not impede them if they have something pre-existing.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's 100%. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you especially is, obviously, we can tell that your condition has impacted your life dramatically, but are there any aspects of your life that most people wouldn't realize were impacted by your disease?
Um, Most people wouldn't realize. I will say a big one that most people don't realize is impacted by this disease is your social life and education. Because I think when it comes down to how American government works and how people think it works, their mindset is, oh, you're sick, you're born with a disease, you can just kind of go collect Social Security, get disability, get benefits, and get a check every single month, and get Medicare, and you should be able to at least live some type of normalcy. And what most people don't realize is that most of your average everyday people with sickle cell disease in particular want to be independent. There, if the provision is there from us, from our government, great, awesome. Not knocking anybody who's done it. But for me personally, for several more of us, we still want to be normal. And I want to go to college. I want to have my professors treat me the same as the person next to me. I want to be able to have a normal social life and go out with friends and go dancing. But if I dance too long, I might get sick. If I don't drink enough water before I go, I might get sick. If I don't, put boundaries around my time and those everyday things, I might get sick. And so I think with sickle cell disease and what rare diseases, period, of course, it's obvious: finances, medical bills, medications, doctor's visits, but it's also the little things that you want to be as normal as possible. I can remember being in middle school and wanting to be on the track team. You can't tell from here, but I'm very tall and have very long legs. So I'm almost 6 foot, flat footed. So I'm a very tall young woman. And everyone's like, what you gonna do with that height? And, the mindset is, oh, you should play basketball. And I was like, no, I actually really wanted to run track. And I can remember, my mom was like, well, why don't we try something else? And so I, learned how to play the clarinet. And it was so interesting because, with things that you just see other people do, you just want to be able to try those things, but knowing that my body probably will not be able to compete with what other people can do with their bodies. And so it becomes difficult because at times you can feel trapped inside of your body, because your body is constantly communicating to you its limitations. And sometimes there are a lot of limitations. And so it's like, wow, like there are just some things that if I want to live a health, I could run track, but if I want to live, then I don't necessarily need to put that stress on my body. And you can begin to feel trapped. So in every area, your mental health, your emotions, those are areas where people with rare diseases really do need support and care.
Definitely. Yeah, you brought up some really good points. Yeah, so just piggybacking off of what you just said, have you ever found it difficult to balance between, oh, I need to do this so that I don't get sick, versus I really want to do this because it's something that's important to me?
All the time. So literally that just happened. This just happened to me today. I work from home. The beautiful thing about having the internet and the way the world is shaped now is like freelance work for someone who is in marketing is very easy to come by, because people, once you learn a great skill set, people are willing to pay for you if your skill set is great. But you do have to balance time and knowing like when your body needs to rest. And so today has been one of those days. It's been really rainy outside. It's been very cool. Last night, I kid you not, I could feel the rain coming just in my body. So when I woke up today and it was raining outside, like I knew that it was raining before I even saw it or heard it. And so it's so interesting because my body all day has been like rest, relax, like don't go get that other cup of coffee to try to get more work done. Just like relax and allow yourself to have a day of rest. And immediately you wrestle with this other voice that's like, but you got to get this done, you got to get that done, you have a deadline for this project, you have a deadline for this project. And so you're constantly in a tug of war. And I think the hard part is like this interview, just in my day to day, has been probably the extent of me getting up and getting dressed and doing something, because I have chosen to listen to my body. And I know that if I were to press past and have a busy day tomorrow and then have another busy day Sunday, without taking that time today, I will end up in what's called a health deficit. So my body is constantly playing catch up. And so it's like now I have learned, as I have gotten, like when I was younger, I wouldn't listen. But now I have learned, okay, you do need to take time to just rest. And I think that's one of the biggest gifts to give yourself when you have a rare disease and not feel guilty.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that you've learned all these skills with especially self-care, and that's something that's really important for anybody, but especially for people living with rare diseases.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
sure.
All right. So, would you say you've experienced any difficulties with the healthcare system in particular?
Oh, yes, my goodness. The healthcare system was the first, in telling my story, the healthcare system was the first barrier that my mother and I ran into, with me having sickle cell. It wasn't a disease, it was how we were treated by the healthcare system and the mindset toward minorities. Um, I believe that in people of color, and it has become increasingly difficult because once insurance changed, there was such a big fight for people with pre-existing health conditions not being able to be on regular insurance. And then, of course, going to the actual doctor's offices and going to the emergency room. There's so many layers I could dissect this, but I will say the biggest one I think has been emergency room care and health insurance, and then doctor's bills. For me, my doctor's bills are ridiculous. The insurance that I get, it covers a lot. But you know, my soon to be husband, we are about to sign on, and like their company is losing their HMO. So there are a lot of things that we will have to, you know, pay for labs and procedures and things like that now upfront. You know, so there are so many issues when it comes to that. Um, Medical bills, I mean, I have gotten astronomical bills. Hospital stays, my last hospital stay, having to press doctors to do certain procedures for me when I have said that something is wrong and I need you to look into this. With sickle cell disease, because of the blood clots that form and the sickling that forms in the body, a lot of times doctors just want to give you the fluids and, you know, take your blood and see what your levels are and send you on your way with some pain meds. And the hard part is pressing a doctor to investigate the underlying issues of why I've had this sudden flare up, knowing that I have been taking care of myself for a while. So, does she have an infection? Does she have the flu? Does she have this? And the only things that they are relying on to tell them the story of what's happening in my body are the labs. Well, I'm the only person in here. So, regardless of what the labs say, I need you to believe me when I say something else is wrong. So, my last hospital visit was April of this year. And when I visited when I was in the emergency room, visited the doctor, got admitted, knowing that the pain crisis was not going down, they ended up investigating and checking my blood and doing some scans on my neck and on my head. And my primary care doctor later got those labs And he was like, you are missing some cartilage in like your cervical vertebrae, like right in here. And so he wanted to just simply test one thing, which was my vitamin D level. And when he tested my vitamin D level was on an 11 when normal labs are anywhere between a 40 and a 64. So I'm sitting here now, of course, better medicine. I'm on a vitamin D supplement that he's giving me, this prescription. But if I had not have pressed for one simple test while I was in the hospital, I would have never known that I had a level that was so low, and it has affected my mental health. Grogginess, not being able to sleep, my bones, my body is all being depreciated. And so you really do, with doctors and healthcare, you have to be your own advocate. You cannot depend on them to be a voice for you. You have to be your own voice. And I think it's very difficult to watch. I will say this in all honesty, it's difficult to watch other races and other people with other diseases be listened to more readily by doctors, and to recognize that because I'm a minority and a person of color, I'm not as easily heard by my healthcare system, and I have to literally fight to be believed. I have even faced being labeled as an addict coming into emergency rooms. And when a sickle cell crisis happens, your body is in a tremendous amount of pain, but you learn how not to hyperventilate, cry, overreact to the pain that's happening in your body. But when you don't put on those dramatics, then the doctors believe, well, they're not sick enough and they're just coming in here for the pain meds. And it becomes really disheartening for the sickle cell patients who are not abusing the system, who are not abusing medication, and who really do need top of the line treatment, to be labeled an addict. Because there are, unfortunately, some sickle cell patients and some others who do get addicted to those very strong narcotics that they give you, but it's not everyone. And so it's just the healthcare system. This would be a whole different interview if we could literally stay on this topic all day. But I will just say that it is the hardest part of having a disease, because you are fighting to live healthily inside your body. And then the people who have taken an oath to do no harm and to protect you are now also fighting you because they don't believe you. So it's like, why do the job if you don't want to serve people who are sick? So yeah, it's just difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And we've gotten the same kind of feedback from a lot of different patients with rare diseases, and the same specific kind of feedback from people with sickle cell. And it's really disheartening to hear that especially the systems in place that are supposed to help people are doing more harm than good.
Yes.
And it's just something that is just really disheartening to hear. Yeah. On to the next question. How have your experiences with rare diseases shaped your dreams for your career, if at all?
That's a big one. So sickle cell disease in college is where I learned that my life and the pace that I wanted to live my life was not about to be how I wanted it. So I'm in undergrad and I am, full steam ahead going through school. And the hard part is that my need for finances, I'm at a full-time job level. I am at a full-time school level. And then here's my body with sickle cell. And I had to make a very life-altering, life-changing decision to go through school and live with a family member, to help me get through school, that believed in me, believed in my abilities, and know that part of my choosing to make school my focus was so that later on down the line, I could have a healthy career with the skill sets that I was learning. And it changed everything, because then it became very obvious that anything more than a part-time schedule with work puts more stress on my body than what my body can handle. Because of the need for money, I went back to school to try. I mean, I went back into the full-time workforce after I graduated college. And when I went back into the workforce, I was very, of course, taken aback by, the employers and the people who don't understand sickle cell, who don't have an understanding of it. And it's not just when you have a crisis or when things get bad. It is, okay, everyone at the office is bringing in donuts today. It's today, I have a really bad cold. I feel really sick. And so, in order to prevent infection, I need to go take some medications that might cause me to be drowsy for the rest of the day. Like my very first day at my first big girl marketing job, I was sick, and my boss looked at me and said, "Go home. Like, I know you're not feeling well." And so that was very hard, because it dawned on me 9 months later, I'm not going to be able to keep up this full-time job and this full-time schedule. And I decided to just kind of trust God and do what I needed to do to build my own freelance agency. And there has not been a month that has gone by where I have not had clients. Has it been easy? No. But sickle cell disease and knowing that the pace of my life was not going to be very fast paced has changed. Yes, for sure.
Wow, that's really awesome. And you also said that you helped people in nonprofit organizations and also women who were dealing with sickle cell disease and other traumatic pasts.
Yes,
Was that at all impacted by your own experiences with rare disease?
absolutely. Um, I think that the advocacy kind of came natural to me. I don't know if you've ever studied or know what the Enneagram is, the personality wheel, but my personality is literally the most dominant trait. And so I'm an Enneagram 8, if anybody knows what that means. And so it came natural to me to be a person who is a voice for others, because it was so hard for me to navigate through adulthood and life and my family situation and my parenting situation. I wish I would have had that big sister, that voice, that mentor to come in and tell me it's going to be okay. Um, Here, let's create a plan. I had a life coach come into my life who was a person of faith like me, and she really helped me learn myself and anchor my personality to what you see now, which is me living my life through my communication gift. And I didn't realize that those gifts and talents really did have a name and they had a place in my life. And so now my only job in life, I really do feel like, is to be a voice to people who are also on that journey trying to find them, and who need to trust and believe that like God can make a way, and there can be a way made for you to earn a living, a great income, have a healthy mental health, and have a healthy life despite your disease. And so that is a gift that was given to me that was absolutely priceless, that I definitely choose to give to others because of sickle cell.
That is amazing. I think that is so inspiring that you are doing this. And honestly, I just really, really admire your character. It's just really inspiring to hear stories like this.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, based on your experiences, do you have any advice for other people trying to advocate and bring about change in this community?
Absolutely. I will say my first piece of advice is pick an area. So with advocacy, you can get really lost really quickly, because the pie of where do we tackle this monster, it can be huge. And I think one of the big things about advocates is that we see so many issues at once that we don't necessarily know where to start. And the wisest thing to do is to pick one area and don't give up on your voice in that one area until after about 2 or 3 years. Because so many times when you start out new in your process and you don't gain the traction and the awareness that you think, you can want to give up on it. And that's a big thing. So number one, pick an area. And number two, stick with that area consistently for about 2 or 3 years, because people are paying attention, and they pay attention when you become consistent. One of my areas of choice, of course, is, being a mentor and a coach to women who, have rare diseases. But the other portion of mine is advocacy for the Red Cross and for African Americans to be better blood donors. So of the American Red Cross's blood donation income, only 1% of that number goes to only 1% of that number are people of color donating. So I chose to pick a lane and stick in it. And now people are, when they see me and they know blood drives are low and they know our city may be in critical shortage, people know we're going to call her, we're going to do some press, we're going to do this. And the other piece of advice that I have for advocates and anyone who wants to really jump in is think big. Like the wildest thing that you could think of that could happen for the brand and for the organization to get the exposure that it needs, go after it. Like the only no's that you hear are in your head. So pitch to the people that you know you want to talk to, pitch to the companies and the organizations, and know your worth. Like don't sell yourself short, but pitch to people who you know that you really would love to partner with them and walk alongside them to bring that awareness. Don't let anyone shortchange you. So I really believe that it's important. Number one, pick a lane. Number two, be consistent. Number three, make sure that you actually dream big and don't tell yourself no so quickly. Because I believe advocates get very frustrated because sometimes you don't understand the tangible reward of what you're doing. And I always talk about the two brains out there, the qualitative brain, the quantitative brain, the numbers person and the feels person. And so being a communication major, we have the theory, of course, which one matters most, the numbers and the numbers and the data, or which matters most, the words and the feelings and the emotions. And you have to have a good marriage of both to be able to see and track your progress. So don't give up if you're not seeing the numbers equal the sweat equity that you are putting into how you're helping your organization, because nonprofit work can be very difficult.
Yeah, definitely. That's some really great advice. Yeah. Now, just another personal question. How would you say your faith has helped you to manage your condition and to give you hope when it gets tough?
My faith has been, I think, the best area in my life and also the most challenging. And I'll say that because in my faith and in the Christian faith, what we believe, of course, is that there has been a savior named Jesus that has died for sickness, and he gives an ability for people to be healed supernaturally, or either through doctors and medicine. And so there has always been words spoken over me that that's going to happen for me one day. And that has often been one of the most frustrating things, because it's like, okay, I live inside of a body. Like I hear people say this and I know the Bible says this and I understand what our faith says to believe, but here's the reality of the body that I'm living in. And so I have had to really fight and wrestle with my faith and make up my mind of what do I believe about God, regardless of what happens to me. And so it has honestly been this year where I am stepping into a place of learning how to enjoy life inside of my body. Because I think when you are sick, you resent your body because it fails you. And when you want it to be there for you the most sometimes is when your body will communicate to you, I cannot do this. And so you constantly are aware of your need for saving in that area and for healing, but then you are also constantly aware at the same time, but healing is not what's happening. We're patching the holes, we're getting you through the crisis, we're getting you through the moment, but nothing is actually happening that is completely healing this disease. And so this has been one of those years for me where I have learned to unfold like a flower and say, okay, what are some things that I can do with my body that can bring honor to it and not resentment? And my faith has been the thing that has helped me with that, because I had to make up in my mind that God was a healer, regardless if I am healed or not. And no matter what if I never see him do this for me, if I never get gene editing, if I never get a stem cell transplant, if I never if my bones ever stop creating sickled cells, I have to know that the God that I serve is a healer, because that's who he is. And I can't reduce him down to my level of belief because of what I don't see happening in my life, because then God would be no bigger than me. So I definitely have watched God in the context that I know heal others. When it comes down to my emotions and like my family dynamic and how things have been for me, healing from trauma and physical abuse and all these different other layers in my life, I have watched God be that healer. And so I do believe one day it can happen for me. Like the door, I have hope. The door is open that, of course, maybe I could do gene editing, maybe I could do stem cell and it'd be successful. Um, but I definitely know that if I leave this earth having not experienced that, then me and God are okay. Like I'm not angry. So that has been a new place that I have arrived to because I didn't always feel that way.
Yeah, that's really wise. And it's amazing all that you've been through and all that you've done. And I just think that's really awesome. What would you say is the most important lesson that you've learned from having this disease?
Um, the most important lesson that I have learned from having sickle cell, I think it has been um, sickle cell disease opened up the door for me to learn to trust people. Um, and I think that that has been the most important lesson that I needed to learn, whether I wanted to learn it or not. The lesson that my life has needed is like, you will always have a dependency on people, whether you like it or not. And so sickle cell disease was the one area in my life that I could not control. And that's the narrative that most chronically ill people go through is I have no control over this. This happened to me. Um, I didn't ask for this. And so the illusion of control is what I think so many people, regardless of being sick or not, deal with, is this illusion that I have the power to control my circumstances, where I want to work, where I want to eat, where I want to drink, where I want to go to school. But when you really think about it, your decision to go to school in this city, this county, this town was actually somebody else's decision because they decided to build the school in this city, this county, this town. So there's always some illusion of control I think we're all trying to fall for that is not really there. And sickle cell disease brought to the surface that no, you're never fully in control, which is why I have faith. And because of that, I have to put my faith also in people. And that is a very scary thing. It's a very humbling thing. And so it has taught me to pray a lot because people are very funny, but it has taught me to pray a lot. It has made me vulnerable in ways that I have not wanted to be. It has humbled me in ways that I have not wanted to be because being completely dependent on mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, doctors, nurses, healthcare systems is scary. And you have to have some type of level of faith in people and in yourself in order to manage a sickness.
Definitely, definitely. And just to close off, do you have any final words for our viewers? Anything you want to say? It can be about anything that you want to say.
I will say that this last thing, for the person or persons watching who you do have a rare illness, know that you're not alone. And I know that at times the loneliness that comes with the sickness is a battle all in itself because there's so many places where you don't get understanding. So not feeling understood is a very hard battle to fight. And my prayer for you is to really get people around you who just love you for who you are and fight for those people and fight to maintain those relationships. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, our survival and our will to live and to continue to go on strengthens when we know we have something to live for and people who really love us. And so just know that you're not alone. There is somebody always out there who is struggling with the same thing you're struggling with, dealing with it the same way you're dealing with it. And there is nothing in your life that I think is too difficult for you to reach out to help, for you to pray, and for you to know that you are heard.
Definitely. Those are some very wise words. And I just wanted to say, just to you, a lot of the times when you're living with a rare disease, you don't realize that it's not something that everyone else has to deal with. And you forget that some things that you're doing are really, really amazing. And I just wanted to say, like, just as an outsider listening to the words that you've said, you really are amazing. I really, really admire your character, your strength, and you really are an inspiration. And I'm so glad to have been able to talk to you today, and it's been really enlightening to have this interview with you. So again, I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for
Oh,
participating and talking to me, and it's been really amazing.
I appreciate this. I appreciate you all taking the time and having me here, and I appreciate your compliment so much. And so I am just here to let people know it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be okay. I appreciate you, and I thank you guys for your platform and for how well you do things. 'Cause there are a lot of organizations out here who have great intentions, but sometimes the execution is not always what they intended for it to look like. And so you all are a great organization. I'm a graphics girl, so I love all the pictures and the graphics and the social media. You're like, you guys are on point. So I love it. Yes.
Thank you, thank you,
You
thank
can
you.
tell you put a lot of hard work into it and it shows.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, and it means a lot coming from someone like you. Yeah, so thank you again, and it was really wonderful meeting you.
Great meeting
Um,
you all too.
yeah.